Now, China has changed how its coronavirus cases are tabulated. The total will now include clinically diagnosed cases, which are those patients who demonstrate all the symptoms of the disease officially known as COVID-19, but have been unable to be scientifically tested or died before they were tested. As a result of the broader guidelines, confirmed cases in Hubei province shot up to nearly 50,000, with the number of deaths rising as well by 242 to now stand at 1,310. The total number of confirmed cases in China has climbed to over 59,800. Hundreds of infections have been reported in more than 24 other countries and territories, but only 2 people have died from the virus outside mainland China, one in Hong Kong and another in the Philippines. Back in China, though, 2 top Chinese officials at the center of the outbreak have been replaced. Jiang Chaoliang was removed from his post as Communist Party Secretary for Hubei, and the party chief of Hubei's capital city, Wuhan, Ma Guoqiang, was also sacked. I'm joined now by China correspondent Elizabeth Law. Now, Liz, let's start with the removal of the 2 party chiefs. What particular instances led to their sacking?
Well, hi, Olivia. Thanks for having me today. Well, I think we first have to look at from when this, at the very beginning, when all of this started, because it has been a series of unfortunate events that have led to this. Because first, there was criticism that the Wuhan and Hubei provincial authorities had sat on this for a very long time. They knew that this was happening, and in fact they just sat on information. We had doctors who were raising the alarm that this was happening in hospitals, and they censured these doctors. Yep. They were arrested by the police, and then they were made to sign sort of I wouldn't call them confession letters, but they were made to sign these letters promising that they would stop spreading fake news and rumors like that. And then when it finally came to it, when the city was put under lockdown, there were now this criticism that there were not enough medical supplies, that donations and supplies that were being donated were now being sent to other places. So it was all quite badly managed, and it's been a long time coming as well. So I wouldn't say it comes as a huge shock.
Right. Well, before this, 2 top members of the Provincial Health Commission were already removed from their posts, and now, these 2 sackings. So would you say that this is the biggest political fallout so far?
No, as I said earlier, I mean, sorry, to go back to what I said, yes, it is, because this is the most senior political, I wouldn't call it beheading, but it's the most senior felling of officers that we've seen so far, because previously it was just health officials from the provincial level, but now it is party officials. So party officials, and in terms of hierarchy, basically the people from the party, your party chiefs, they come up with the long-term policies. They come up with the policies, and then when you have your city mayors, they are the ones who do the day-to-day running of the city and the business. So for the party chief to be removed, it is really quite a big deal. Of course, many had suspected that the Wuhan mayor would have been removed as well, because he had this very contrite interview with state broadcaster CCTV, and he is the guy, if you remember, who was the one when he was at a press conference, he actually wore a surgical mask upside down. So that wasn't too great either. And of course, we know that China's censors have actually allowed criticism of the provincial authorities to remain on the internet, but for some reason, the Wuhan mayor has escaped this.
Well, because of, let's go high up the ladder, right up to the top. Because of how the government is handling the contagion, whether it's seen as adequate or inadequate, is Chinese President Xi Jinping in a vulnerable position now?
No, I honestly don't think so. He basically has put Premier Li Keqiang in charge of the centralized efforts to deal with this outbreak. So basically, if this doesn't go well, President Xi would say, look, Premier Li was in charge of it. If it goes well, because the President is at the head of it, so I don't think he is in a vulnerable position at all. And don't forget, I mean, despite the fact that the censors have allowed criticism of the provincial government to remain on the internet, other criticism and information within China is still very, very much controlled.
Right. Well, let's move away from this. As mentioned earlier, we've learned that China has expanded its diagnostic guidelines for confirming cases. What are the differences between the old and the new methods, and what else does this mean?
Right. Okay. So the old method which is according to WHO guidelines, which is that you have to exhibit symptoms of it, you have to have pneumonia or some sort of respiratory tract disease, and then you have to have a CT scan which would show lesions on your lungs, and then your samples have to be lab tested to show that there is COVID. No, sorry, that is the virus, the coronavirus in it, that particular strain. Well, now they're saying that they are allowing clinical diagnosis to be counted under the official numbers, which means that as long as you exhibit symptoms of it, or there is a possibility that you are infected, and you have the CT scan or X-ray of your lungs, it shows the lesions to prove it, that is enough. You don't have to be lab tested. Is it good or bad? Well, in fact, actually, it's not a bad thing, because I was just in an online briefing with a epidemiologist. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Well, so he says that there are three categories of how you diagnose someone whenever there are outbreaks like that. You have suspected cases, you have probable cases, and then you have confirmed cases. Technically, what they are saying, this clinical diagnosis is what we know as probable cases, where you already do have you know that they have sort of exposure to cases, and you wouldn't want to waste a test kit on them, and also because when you always have to send every sample, if you need a confirmed case to be confirmed by lab testing, this means that the number of cases that you can confirm every day is limited by the testing capability of your labs. So by having this clinical diagnosis thing, or what we know in the rest of the world as probable case methodology, it in fact is a better thing.
Right. Well, with the new guidelines and subsequent rise in numbers, should we be concerned about the true scale of this outbreak?
I honestly don't think so. I think actually this is a really good thing, because for weeks now, since this outbreak first started, people have been saying that the true scale of this outbreak is much bigger than it really is. And I think by using these numbers, it really gives us a better sense of how big the scale is, and we can work towards containment. But bear in mind, right now, this is only being used in Hubei province, which is the epicenter of all of this. And I suppose if this gets rolled out to China as a whole, it would actually be much better, and it would relieve some of the pressure that is being put on the healthcare system.
Well, thank you so much, Liz. Always a pleasure talking to you. You can visit straitstimes.com to read her story on China's new clinical methods of diagnosis.